darling. So my subject today, I guess, is centered around how to make money in turbulent times. And I don't think, I've been in business 40 years, I've traded through 3, if not 4, unexpected drop off the cliff recessions. Can I say that word? Right, well, it's going to trigger some form of recession, this, isn't it? You figured that out. And I've turned on a sixpence many times, and I've also had to borrow that sixpence to get to the bank or whatever. It's not easy. And I'm not presenting to you today or chatting to you today from the point of view that I know everything that needs to be known, because I was supposed to be celebrating 40 years in business this year. I'm not feeling as celebratory as I might about the whole thing at the moment. But I've never done something with the health dimension as well as the kind of finance dimension. But I do know how to handle some of these things in a way that's worked for me in the past. And I'm sharing that with you, not as if this is what you should do or pay me £5 million and we'll all be sorted. So obviously all donations would be gratefully received if you're feeling in the need. But because we need to work together, really. And I know you guys are supporting each other amazingly. And in many ways, I'm learning from you, because Spain is about 2 weeks ahead of the UK in terms of lockdown, economic response, whatever. And so I'm watching you and what works for you as closely as I'm watching what works for people in the UK. So you know me and my analogies, ladies. So I'm going to start by telling you how I find my space when all hell breaks loose and the rule book's torn up. Because I don't know about you, but a lot of the things that worked 3 weeks ago do not work in my business today. You know, the methodologies of getting customers, the methodologies of getting paid are just all up in the air. So I go back to fundamentals, and I really am a fundamentalist. And this is where I start. Are you a fan of elephants? You're going to go, hang on, she's gone off piece, but bear with me. You know the story of Hannibal, the general who took the elephants up the Alps, don't you? If not, you've got a great thing to do during the lockdown period, which is to study Roman history, which is quite interesting, by the way, in its own right. If, like me, you like to find out what did other people who have a lot of trouble do to survive those troubles. And the Romans, by the way, had a massive viral problem in the age of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius. And if you've really got nothing to do, I'll come back and tell you about that some other time, if it gets that dire that you want to know about ancient Roman medical issues. But why am I interested in Hannibal and elephants? And this isn't Hannibal lecture. There will be no eating of one's friends during this webinar. This is the original Hannibal, the general. Well, in a way, doing something really difficult is like fighting a war. And you can see people using the war analogy for fighting the virus. And I really don't mean we've got to go out and start killing each other or taking up arms or being violent. But there's a lot to learn from dealing with the unexpected, from how generals manage their resources and get on with stuff. Would you agree? Yeah, we don't actually have to go and start a fight, but it's useful that as a body of what normally works, warfare's got a lot to teach us about turning on a sixpence and managing the unexpected. And that, to my mind, a great general is generally the general that wins. Generals who consistently lose battles are not regarded as wonderful generals that you want to follow. And it's kind of the same in business, isn't it? If you want to learn how to do a thing, you need to learn it from someone who's succeeded at it. Learning from someone who failed at it can be interesting, as long as you remember that you should be learning not to do that. But therefore, there are two great generals that I go to when I want to figure out what to do. And neither of them is Hannibal. The general of Hannibal's time that I go to is known as Scipio Africanus. And his father was Scipio the Senior, who, by the way, governed Spain when it was a Roman province. So it's kind of topical for you, if not up to date. And the reason why I go to Scipio is, despite Hannibal having the reputation down through the ages of being one of the best generals ever, Scipio beat him all the way down from northern Italy in the Alps, where this picture is conceptualizing, down to Carthage, and ultimately beat the Carthaginians forever. So would you agree with me that Scipio Africanus was a better general than Hannibal? He just didn't have such great PR or such pretty elephants. So we all remember Hannibal, well, not all of us, but nerds like me who like to study stuff like this, remember Hannibal, but actually Scipio is the better general. And there's another great general in this world, and it's not very girly-girly, is it? And I'll promise you we're going to get going with this, that the world thinks of as a great general, pops into mind for most people is Napoleon. The lovely little short Frenchman. Most people have heard of him, and he's regarded as one of the world's great generals. But do you know the name of the general that beat him all the way up through the Spanish Peninsula, all the way through France, and then again at the Battle of Waterloo? He was the Duke of Wellington. You see, Napoleon had great PR, but the person who beat him consistently over a very extended period of times was Wellington. And the connection between Wellington and Scipio Africanus is that Scipio made the rules for being a successful general. He actually laid that foundation, and Wellington studied him. So 1,000 years later, what Scipio did to beat Hannibal is still working for what Wellington had to do to beat Napoleon. Now, I'm not suggesting that we all put on pretty red jackets and march across Europe or fetch elephants or fight our way across Europe, but there are some fundamentals in this that have stood me in good stead when the economy's fallen off a cliff before. And in a nutshell, what Scipio teaches, well, we're not going to do this in Latin because my Latin's worse than my Spanish, you'll all be very relieved, is this: you need to understand the terrain that you operate in. Terrain meaning the landscape, but also the conditions in which you operate. And you've got to put your brain back and imagine more than 1,000 years ago, you're a general sending troops into battle. You have no mobile phone, no radar. If at best people are running about with a piece of paper or a stick or a hand-delivered message to go 5 miles over there, this is happening. So you are fundamentally out of date all the time, which is what I feel like, despite the massive amount of information I'm getting, most of it is rubbish, out of date speculation. It's not much use at all, most of it. And so what Scipio said was you have to actually understand the terrain. He was the first general to use spies, not just to report on morale, but also there is a river, there is a bridge. The bridge is rickety. If we go around the back of this place, the land is very muddy. It's going to be really difficult to move infantry. He used information about the landscape to plan what would work. And what I learned in the first recession I survived, which was the late 70s one, I must sound as old as Methuselah now, was that information is critical. Because if you don't know where you are, and you don't know how you are, and you don't know where you're going and what you're trying to achieve, it's almost impossible to decide what to do. And I see an awful lot of business people, not you, because you're thinking about what happens next and you're supporting it, doing random stuff. So all of a sudden we've got 11 million online courses from people who've never even done anything online before, because someone's told them randomly that's the thing to do. And for some people it is, but actually if you're going to sink your scarce capital into building an online course, it will be very wise to research, is there a market for this? And is anyone willing to pay for it? And if I can't get paid for it, how much is it going to cost me to create it? Because taking the time at the moment to deliver something that costs you money is a catastrophic mistake unless you are fairly convinced. That's the team bringing tea, you see. It's gone live, Annie, you know who that is. You got to love virtual, that's actual tea, much better. Actual coffee for KoffeeKlatch, obviously. But you've got to be fairly sure there's a market for it. And this is not just a change in money and a change in marketplace and finances, it's a radical change in capacity. Right, there are people who used to work as virtual assistants 20 hours a week 3 weeks ago who are saying to me, I've only got 5 hours a week capacity because the kids are home and I can't untangle myself from that. So not only is there a change in money, there's a change in the capacity to deliver. So if you're changing your business from doing A to doing B, but in fact B would make you money, but you don't have the capacity to deliver that, it may not get you anywhere. You may be better off changing to C, which at least you've got the capacity to do. And we're not used to seeing our businesses in terms of limitations. We are used to seeing our businesses in terms of possibilities, and possibilities are great. And I know, given who you've got in the Costa Women, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ali, you've already done some great scoping areas about we could do this, we could do that, we could hold up this, we could do that. But if you don't have the capacity to deliver it, like the general sending troops into battle, saying, send that battalion across the river, if that battalion are all down with cholera, it doesn't matter what your plans are. So I want to offer you a little mapping method today of finding out where you are and how you are, and also resolving some of these issues about should I work for free that I'm hearing a lot of in the micropreneur space. And to that end, and this is why you got sides from me, I've generated a little map. Let me get out of it, because when I tried to do this with no visuals, no one understood a word I was doing. So please nod and tell me the words are the right way round, and my video isn't mirroring back to front. That took me half an hour this morning, working out what the reverse looked like. Oh, I'm not a graphic designer or a visual artist. So this is what I'm going to suggest you have a look at as a way of plotting where you are. Now, the cross in the middle, I always think of like a window, an old-fashioned sash window. I suppose there's people in this room never seen one, but honest, all windows used to have a cross in the middle once. And I want you to draw that out either mentally or on a piece of paper and give yourself 4 sections. And I've divided them up into health and family on one side and money and giving on the other. And I want you to think about the middle of that cross being not good. So, Annie, my darling, being confined to bed, I don't know what your health normally is, you might plot yourself somewhere between not good and good. You certainly wouldn't be plotting yourself as in robust health right now, would you? So you can make a little dot in that space, which gives you where are you on that line from not good to good. If you get better, you're going to go further away from the center. And if you get worse, which I very much hope you don't, you're going to come in. And the reason why it's important to pay attention to this every day when you're a micro business is that this varies. Because this is not just physical health, this could be mental health or psychological health. Now, I'm one of the most psychologically robust people I've ever met. I'm modest as well. But even I've had a few days when I've been down in the not so good box. And it is not a good plan on those days to have loads of activity planned, things that are mission critical. One of the key to main issues as a micropreneur is how are you? Because I've had 2 days since all this began when I honestly could do nothing. And it was much better to do nothing, to go to sleep, to relax, to do what I could and hit it the next day than to struggle on spending 12 hours trying to do what really was an hour's worth of work. So keep a really good idea of where are you. Does that make sense to you? And accept that that map will keep changing. I hope for all of you it keeps changing for the better, but it's not in the nature of things that all progress is in one direction. So don't beat yourself up if it doesn't. Oh, I've got a chat now. I've got to have a look at bad migraine and asthma. Well, I'm sorry you had a migraine, my lovely, but I'm really quite pleased that it wasn't anything worse. So I want you also to look at your family books. And we've got a similar scale, but I haven't drawn all the lines in, because me getting 145-degree line is a miracle, but getting 4 actually is way above my pay grades. I am so not a graphic designer. So you imagine you've got your diagonals in on the others. You need to put your family in there, because obviously if you're worried sick about elderly relatives, or you've got small children at home with no partner to help with childcare, whether you've got one who won't or you haven't got one, your family situation from the point of view of building the business is going to be less good than it is if you have got a lovely big house, lots of people resident with you, older kids who can take care of themselves for hours at a stretch. You need to plot those two very firmly, because they will affect what capacity you've got to spend time doing things other than that. And there were very few of us, I think, would leave an elderly relative without food if we could do some kind of delivery for them, or leave a screaming child who wanted lunch in favour of working on our business. So it's a serious capacity limiter. And certainly with the virtual entrepreneurs I'm working with, there are people saying to me, I'm only keeping my regular clients at the moment, and even those have dropped back some hours. I'm not even offering capacity to new clients because I don't have any capacity. And you shouldn't ignore that when you look at your own marketing plans, by the way, because a lot of people think if they're using micro businesses, they can drop them and pick them up in 2 or 3 months' time, and they will get back the very capacity that they dropped. But it isn't necessarily so, because they might have sold that capacity to someone else. So have a look at what the resource side of your business is for you, and remember that plays out for other people. In the right-hand side of your business, you've got a money equation. Now, different people are in different financial situations, even in this crisis. You've got some people who can live off the money they've got for the next 30 days, year. They've got pensions, they've got other income that's not dependent on earning, and their money situation is right out on the good bar. We've got other people, at least in the UK, who are seriously worried about whether they can feed their children over the Easter weekend. Their situation, however you look at it, is not good. But you need to plot it, because if you've got plenty of money, then time spent taking care of yourself and your family is going to take a different complexion than if you've got no money and you're struggling to fit all those things in. And we're all in different places on that journey. And just like the health plot, I find myself bouncing around. You know, if a client pays me, I get really excited, even if they pay me something. If a client doesn't pay me, I get a little depressed. So I'm bouncing about on money, because I never actually know till the money arrives in the bank, how much money have I got? And I'm telling you this because I wouldn't want you to think I'm talking to you from the point of view, if I've got £11 million in the bank, it doesn't make any difference. But I'm not also worried about whether I can feed my kids at the weekend. A, they're grown up and left home, it's their job to feed themselves. But B, I am not in an environment where that's my big issue. Why is it important to plot that? I hear a lot of people go, well, maybe I should do stuff for free. I should do stuff for goodwill. Are you hearing that? Maybe I should do this and that. But if you have got very little capacity because you're already doing stuff for free, taking care of your family, you can't spend the majority of time doing free stuff, because you're not going to have the capacity. It's one thing doing 2 hours a week worth of free stuff if you've got 40 hours a week to work. And it's another thing doing 2 hours a week worth of free stuff if you've only got 2 hours a week to work, because these other things are currently off the graph. And what I'm seeing is a lot of people randomly drop their rates for what they do on the basis that somehow they should do it for nothing. And there are other ways to save your customers money if that's where you are. One is to do less hours, but at the same rate, if you're a virtual worker, because that means that they pay less, but you also do less, which is completely different from them paying less and you doing the same, because you can't use that time to do anything else. Now, in the 80s recession, there was a massive fall off in training mates, and this is true, right? At that point, we had a business that spanned the Middle East. So this would sound familiar to Ali. And at that point, my training rate in the 80s was £2,000 a day, or the equivalent number of dollars. There was a massive fall off in training rates in the UK. And today, an ordinary skilled sort of associate level trainer would be getting about 250 quid a day. And a lead trainer might be getting 500 quid. And if you were a real master classer, you might be getting more. So there's been a massive change in the rates. We were faced with clients saying to us, will you work for us instead of at 1,600 a day or 2,000 at £500 a day? And we looked at our resources and we worked out, as time-based businesses, I could only sell Monday once. Whether I sold it for 250, 500 quid, 600 quid, whatever, I couldn't sell it again. It's not like when you scale out a product, when you can sell the same product 100 times. And we decided not to drop our rates. Now, my co-directors at that time were having a fit because they were going, your revenue will drop. And it did. We dropped from doing about 40,000 each in training to about 5,000. But from that day to this, I've continued to do it in 2 days a year. I could have done it by making 250 a day to make £5,000 and run around being really exhausted. So I very rarely do paid training, but when I do, I still hold my rates because I discovered I could have the time back to spend with my family, to spend on my health, to spend on building other income streams. So whatever you do when you're looking at your money situation, do not assume that the inevitable thing to do is just to charge less or do stuff for free. If you are going to start doing stuff at lower than normal rates, remember that an hour is still an hour. And you need to make sure that the people you're giving a discount to know what your normal rates are and when the discount is going to end. So let me give you an example. Supposing you're a web designer and you normally charge €60 an hour to do something, and you're scrambling for work and we're all there, and you offer people work to do work at €30 an hour. Some of those people will close business with you and they will start working with you. Some of them will go away and come back next year, but all of them will have in their mind you're a €30 an hour person. So you are going to spend the next 2 to 5 years trying to get your rates back up again. Because you can't suddenly go, well, last Monday I was €30 an hour, but today I am 60. So what you need to do when you're plotting your money against resource, if you must discount your rates, bearing in mind you've still got the same or less hours to work, is to say to people, my normally hourly rate is €60. This is called, by the way, being a trader and not a beggar. We teach it a lot. And what I'm going to do for you is, if you pay me in advance, I'm going to do this one project for you at €30 an hour. But when it comes to another project, we're going to have to talk rates because that's not normally what I charge. So what have you done? You've let them measure the extra value you're giving them, and you're giving it to them in exchange for something. Do you follow me? Because a lot of people, and I've seen this for decades, will go, okay, you don't want me at 500 quid a day. How about 400? How about 300? How about 200? How about 50p? But there's no exchange. You're not getting anything more for that. So if your strategy is to discount your time or your product or whatever it is you're doing, and you have got enough capacity to do enough of it, make sure that there is a written agreement with your client about what your normal rates are, when they revert, and what conditions rest on this rate. For example, in my own business, we have a prepay scheme where people can buy 2, 10, 20 hours of our service in advance. And those rates, depending how many you buy in advance, are considerably cheaper than the rates if you just use me and we send you a bill and we beg you for money and ask you for money and be really nice to you and wait till you're in the mood, which is what goes on in normal times. Never mind what's going on now with people paying in dribs and drabs when they can. But people will come to me and go, how do I get a cheaper rate from you? And I go, no problem, you'll need to pay in advance. We always have a deal to give the customer something they want in exchange for something we want. Does that make sense to you? Don't be too keen to give away absolutely everything they want and not get anything back from you, because there are people who genuinely can't feed their friends this weekend, and there are also people sitting in 20 million euro houses who've got plenty of cash in the bank, who are just negotiating you down on your rates because there's a reason why they're rich. They're tight with their money, right? But you can counter negotiate with these people. Does that make sense? So your customers will come to you and ask you for freebies. And this is the final corner that I want to talk to you about. And we kind of get chatting with this thing. I called it social capital when I first started doing this, but I discovered that nobody knew what I meant by social capital, and it mucked up my nice little grid because it wouldn't fit in. So I've called it giving, but I mean social capital. And what do I mean by that? Every one of us is a member of multiple business and local communities. And every one of us, whether we're conscious of it or not, are generating social capital. And you know what I mean, particularly as women. The woman that always helps you by taking the kids on the school run, if in normal circumstances she rings you and she says, do me a favour, I'm sick, can you take the kids this afternoon? You're more likely to say yes, because she is always helping you, than you are from a complete stranger, or even worse, someone who's refused to help you in the past when you needed it. Do you recognise that syndrome? That's social capital. Similarly, in business, there's social capital, which is why businesses like Apple have just donated millions to face masks in America, because they want to be seen to increase social capital in difficult times. It's not just altruism, and I'm not knocking it, it's enlightened self-interest. They want to come out of this as the people who helped, the brand you can rely on, the brand you can trust. And there's a great deal of pressure on micro businesses to give in the social capital sense, but quite often, again, from the most troublesome customers. So I've got a little grid, and it's a mean grid, and it's a tight grid, but it's worked for me, and I'm not letting this one go. First of all, when an existing customer asks me to do something for nothing or vastly discounted, I look at their track record of me. If they have always been the client who frankly took the mickey, I already gave them in social capital. They've already used up that budget. And I am much more likely with them to say, no, sorry, this is where we are, this is the deal, than someone who's always been a reliable client, who's always paid on time, who's always been sweet, who's asking me for flex, because they have not already used up their social capital with me. Because crises may bring out the best in some people, but it doesn't change others. And people who are always difficult, slow payers will be even more difficult, slow payers now, regardless of whether their personal circumstances merit it, because they know they can get away with it. They will pull the sympathy card. And you need to reserve your social budget, if you like, for people who actually need it. You also need to look at your giving side, because we all give to our communities, we all give to our families, and never more than now. But if you have got a way of making money in your business, and not everybody does, and you are taking all the time that you could be making money into this social capital side of things, you need to have a plan for what happens when you run out of cash. Now, that's partly a question of temperament, by the way. Some people, when the community is in trouble, will put all of their interests, all of their planning on ice and go, I don't care, I'm just going to deliver food today, and that's lovely. But we live in a society when everybody's not necessarily going to help you pay your rent because you spent all your time volunteering. So my mission in my business is I'm not delivering food to anyone. I actually live with an asthmatic, so I kind of can't. But I'm trying to help everybody who can make money to make money, so that we who are able to make a bit can at least donate cash to food banks and charities, because we can't give by practically going out and doing something. Does that make sense to you? So you need to make your map. So you might be well on the good side of money at the moment, or right down in the middle of not at all good, really frightened, don't know what I can pay tomorrow. That creates a map with your giving. Now, giving is also good for your mental health, by the way. I have a son who's furloughed at the moment, and the first thing he did when he got laid off from work was find something to volunteer for, because not sitting there doing nothing and worrying was much better for him. But he could afford the social capital because he's getting paid anyway. So his map for reality is different to mine. Now, I get up in the morning and I don't do it with a pencil anymore, but I do it mentally. And I've got now 4 points on my grid, and I map it. Which bit is squashed? Is it health? Do I need to get my health a bit out now? Do I need to eat better? Do I need maybe to meditate? Do I need to book a doctor's appointment, difficult as it is? Do I need to lean into my family? Love it. How can you get mumps at the age of 35, as one of my sons has just done this? Right, this is a brilliant thing to do in the middle of all this. Have I got enough money? Where am I on my social capital budget? What does the shape of that look like? Because in a healthy balance, and you're not going to be there all the time, those should plot out as another square, shouldn't they? The best square would be a big one that went right round the edge of this stuff. But for many of us, it's going to be a bit wonkily. Some of it's going to be too close to the center for comfort, and that's okay. But you can use that as a map for what do I need to do. And I have used this through 3 recessions. I use it daily now. And I also use it when I look at my team. I mean, I've had people up and down like the proverbial what's it straws with who's ill, who's not ill. I've had people who can't give me any capacity because their kids are on their lap, their dog got sick, goodness knows what. I've had people in my team who are so desperate for money, if I don't pay them on time, the kids won't eat. I've got other people with high earning partners who are saying to me, just put me on the back burner. You know, I love my money, but I'm not the big issue. All of these things I'm plotting here because I'm looking all the time at the terrain I'm operating in. I'm doing what Scipio Africanus did as he chased Hannibal down the Alps, and I'm doing what Wellington did as he chased Napoleon slowly but steadily up through the Spanish Peninsula. I'm looking at what are my resources, what are my objectives, both short-term and long-term, and what have I got? So this isn't a talk about, oh, you could do this, you could do that, the other, because I know you got that covered with your creativity, but you can create what you like. But if your army falls over at the first bridge because that bridge wasn't built properly, you won't get anywhere. Some things never change. And this is why, my lovelies, we really believe you need to get your ducks in a row. And it is the hardest thing to do as an entrepreneur in a time of crisis, not to be driven by, I don't know what's happening, I don't know what's happening, not to be governed by other people's anxieties, but just to keep plotting what resources have I got, because that gives you where can you push. Where can you push? So I've just done this with my team, for example, and gone the priority for money in our team has got to go to people who are helping us create things that help create money. Does that make sense to you? Right? We cannot prioritize paying people who do stuff that doesn't make us money at the moment. They can go to the back of the list. They know they're on the back of the list, because if we don't make money with the people at the front of the list, there is no list. It takes it away from I like Jane, I love Fred, what am I going to do about so-and-so? Because you know these safety things. When you're on a plane and they run out of oxygen, you put your own mask on first. That is the map for is your mask on. Then you can apply that map to resources and team and what's going on with your customers. But if you're not breathing, you're not working. And this is a terrible time for people to breathe. But it is as necessary as ever to sort yourself out and then help sort other people out. So I don't know if that's any use to you, my lovelies,